Hello, class. Welcome to kind of the tail end of Lesson 3 here. This is Friday, February 11th, and I thought I'd just give a quick reminder that the Lesson 3 items are due, of course, tomorrow at midnight. The Lesson 3 discussion and quiz on the Western Frontier, and I applaud the students who have started work on that. I see some of you have already started posting on the Lesson 3 discussion forum, which is fantastic. And also, I want to applaud everyone for your thorough posts last week. In Lesson 1, I saw a lot of people sharing a lot of interesting details about their personal lives, and even posting like songs, like RJ did here, and in some instances pictures. Um, vacations. There was one from Mexico. Who was that? And here's one from Greg, and there was one, maybe it's farther up. Where was it? It was somewhere. Marie. Yes, Marie, you posted this picture of what was it? Yes, that's a really neat place. Yeah. So thank you so much, everyone, for sharing things, on that discussion forum, and then also thank you for everyone's participation on the Lesson 2 discussion on analyzing these cartoons. Thought it was very thorough and very perceptive, and really I couldn't ask for anything more. Great work there. So. And here we are going into, Lesson 3, hopefully wrapping up with Lesson 3 with this discussion over this weekend. By the way, I'm impressed so far by the analysis, especially of the first article, which isn't the easiest article in the world to deal with because it's written in kind of an academic, abstract style. You may not realize, but this is actually the author here is this guy, Karl Marx, who's more well known for authoring the Communist Manifesto. But here he's not sort of beating the drum for communism. He's more talking about how American capitalism was distinctive. This is something he also liked to do, was kind of analyze the way economies worked, and not just proposing his own alternatives, but analyzing the way things worked. And in his mind, actually, there was a lot about America that he admired. His typical view of capitalism was that that workers generally had less leverage and less negotiating power compared to business owners, and that workers generally got the worst of the deal. But he actually feels like America is a bit of an exception, at least here in 1867 when he is writing, where he notes that the frontier is giving American workers a whole new avenue of opportunities to settle on the frontier, which is not just affecting those Americans who do choose to settle out in the frontier, but even affecting the labor market for those who stayed behind and continue to work the new up-and-coming factory jobs on the East Coast and in the Great Lakes region, which, by the way, we'll look at what those were like and what the new industrializing economy out east in the eastern U.S. was like. We'll look at that more next lesson, Lesson 4. But, if there's any sort of slightly more ideal version of capitalism that Marx would not be so critical about, it'd be actually America's version, which did have these greater opportunities for kind of self-directed advancement. I think the reason why he was generally so critical of capitalism is he felt that this was more of the exception rather than the rule, because he's coming from Germany, from Europe, where all the land had already been settled. But here he's noticing, America's a whole different story. So hopefully you get something out of this article that's interesting to you. And also this article, is important for noting kind of, how the turning points where Americans started to notice for the first time that America was distinctive. Which, by the way, just to kind of give Marx some kudos, he's already noticing this in 1867, kind of while the frontier is still being settled, that the frontier is having effects on America and making it distinctive from Europe. It really wasn't until 1893 that the first American historian, Frederick Jackson Turner, really got a broad kind of bird's eye view of how it was making America distinctive to have this frontier. And it really people only started to notice this as the frontier was closing. Sometimes as an American, it's harder to realize what you had until you're about to lose it. And I think that's why Americans themselves, for the first time, really only started to appreciate why the frontier was so important as it was kind of shrinking and becoming fully settled by about this point. And finally, at this point, you get Frederick Jackson Turner noticing that America has been made more individualistic as a result of the frontier, and you get other later historians like Ray Allen Billington writing in the 50s, kind of agreeing with this and concurring that this, and actually building upon Frederick Jackson Turner's argument or thesis, in saying that not only did it make Americans less individualistic, or the frontier made Americans more individualistic, I should say. Not only that, but what's an implication of that? Well, that Americans were less interested in collective institutions such as labor unions and socialism, all right? Which, America did toy with that to a certain extent, which we'll talk about in the coming, lessons. There was some minor interest in those things, and especially labor unions. There was increasing interest, especially up until about the middle of the 20th century, the 1950s. That's when the labor unions had their peak. But they never became as influential, either labor unions or socialist parties, not nearly as influential as in like European countries. And once again, that traces back to the Western frontier. And while Karl Marx may have admired American capitalism for offering, in his mind, more equal opportunities to workers than in Europe, in a way, he might have been disappointed by, because American capitalism wasn't boxing in American workers in such a situation of desperation and frustration with no other alternatives. Because of that, American workers were inevitably going to not see as much appeal in his own ideas of getting rid of capitalism and introducing something else. So it's kind of an irony of that. Probably admired America on the one hand, but then must have been discouraged by the realization that that inevitably his ideas would have less appeal because American capitalism seemed to offer more opportunities because of the frontier. So some interesting issues that I hope you look at, and if you haven't already, and look forward to finishing up the discussion on this weekend, and we'll continue on looking at that kind of industrial capitalist economy that was growing in America on the East Coast and in the Great Lakes region. We turn to the Gilded Age, the age of industrialization in that area of the country. Next week, we'll start looking at that. So see you all then, and in the meantime, have a great weekend. Bye-bye.